Welcome to R&R Reviews Unscripted. You're here today with the Rogers brothers, and we are going to break down a little bit of information on our review for Avengers Endgame. We are so excited. This movie has built anticipation for years. We really think that it paid off in some areas, and we also think in others that it didn't. And we just want to give an explanation and dive into some of the plot holes that we mentioned in our reviews. We would like to say that from this point forward, if you have not seen the movie, we are about to give a lot of spoilers. So if you have not seen Avengers Endgame at this moment, please do not listen any further. You have been warned.
So as you know, if you looked at our review page on Facebook, or in our reviews, we gave Avengers Endgame an overall rating of 8.4 points out of 10.
We want to ensure that we took this from a point of view that wasn't just a fanboy that's, grown up and loved these movies, but we gave thought and purpose behind the reason. In this system, we're not going to give 10s out very easily.
Right, we're going to be very hard on movies. Keep in mind that probably 4 is about average, so 8.4 is still very high. We're not saying it's a bad movie by any means. This isn't just a number we're throwing out here. We do have a very specific formula to come up with these ratings.
Let's kind of dive into the reasons that we said what we did. I found that the storyline was very strong. We really enjoyed the storyline, but there was a couple things that presented some holes.
There's obviously a lot of time travel going on in this movie. And when Nebula and War Machine traveled to Morag to get the Power Stone, when they both go to leave, they're going to sync up and time travel back at the same time. But of course, Thanos has showed up and zeroed in on Nebula, and they prevent her from doing that for a few seconds. Shortly after she is able to get up, move around, she goes to the ship to call everybody and tell them that Thanos knows. It isn't able to reach them. And then Thanos, his ship flies over to grab her. At this moment in time, why did she not just time travel back? It would have literally eliminated the whole enemy of the movie if she had gone back right then and there. We know her time travel device is still working because the other Nebula uses it to time travel back.
I was going to say to you that maybe it's possible that it lost the Pym particles even though she didn't travel, but you make an interesting point with that.
And we know that they don't have to be exactly synced up to time travel back because Ant-Man wouldn't have been able to get back. War Machine wouldn't have been able to get back alone if it was all a sync-up process.
I also want to point out whenever Captain America decides to stay in his time after returning the stones, was that if he returned the Soul Stone, first off, he would have met Red Skull, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if he returned the Soul Stone, how does the stone go back without giving the souls back that it would have taken? Would we have gotten Black Widow back?
Red Skull states very strongly that it's an eternity-old exchange, a soul for a soul.
What's interesting, though, is that even then, though, that's within two different timelines, right? Because there was two souls technically taken for the stone one time.
In a way, but Gamora did end up being alive, even though she's not alive in the way people want her to be. She is alive and back in our MCU universe.
So we have a lot of unanswered questions as far as the Soul Stone goes and how that process looked. Also, Captain America still doesn't even know that Red Skull is the one that's been there that whole time. Nobody knew who Red Skull was, so they weren't able to tell Captain America. Even more than that, we have those questions about the Soul Stone, but they were very specific that whenever you traveled back in time within the movie, you wouldn't be able to change facets of the past and come back to there. What would happen, the past that you had would become an alternate reality and the future would become a new future. So you wouldn't in essence be back in that same place. So whenever Captain America shows back up at the end, how is he in the same reality that would have been if he wouldn't have been back in time that entire time?
And this is something the directors did go on to point out themselves as well.
Joe Russo said in an interview that there's probably an untold story at that point. So I do like how they kind of left that open to play.
And with a plot hole like this that could be explained in the future, resolved by a later movie, this is not something that we degraded the score because it can be resolved in the future and explained in another movie. We only hit those low grades whenever there's something that's just completely unexplainable.
It's a superhero movie and it means a lot to us, but at the end it does fall short in certain areas, and it's going to. That it's with a movie of this landscape and size, for that to be the only issue confronted, to me, makes it a solid movie.
Right, you're taking 23 different movies, combining them into one with 30 plus characters, and you're adding time travel in on top of that. That's a lot to handle, and for what it was, they did a fantastic job.
This movie has now surpassed Titanic as the second highest grossing film ever made. James Cameron actually tweeted and it was a picture of the Avengers Endgame logo sinking the Titanic, and he was like basically congratulating them on beating that spot. But anyway, I know that there was one more thing that we really wanted to talk about.
Score, sound, music, that's a very good portion of the movie. You may not always notice it, but it really does add a lot to the movie. And they really didn't do much, for this movie in the way of the score. They kind of just used some old scores. And I'm not talking about the time travel ones. Of course, when they time travel back to a specific scene from one of the other movies, it makes sense to use that same score and music that they did. Otherwise, we wouldn't get it. But for the new scenes, they could have done a little something different. It did make some parts feel really cliche, like when Black Widow sacrifices herself, because they literally use the same song, and it's almost the identical thing as when Gamora got killed in Infinity War. Last but not least, is some of the characters didn't quite all get a close to their story arc. Of course, they closed out the big dogs that probably aren't going to be in future movies, like Captain America, Iron Man, of course. Thor, they did kind of close his out, but they left him open, and we do know he'll be back because he did just sign on to do some more movies. Hulk didn't really get a good closing, I don't think.
I do think that the majority of his story arc wasn't necessarily the love interest. It was more his struggle within him and the Hulk. He wasn't able to be controlled. He was stuck inside the Hulk, and then you go to Infinity War, and he can't get the Hulk to come out. Now it's just him. And so you find this meeting.
It's definitely an interesting take on the Hulk, because he's always been someone to be known as, hey, you can't beat him, because the more you fight him, the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. He was always powered by anger. So this new Hulk is definitely different.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure he's going to turn back up though in these other movies. I would love to see him in like the next Doctor Strange or something like that.
The Russo brothers confirmed the damage that he did with the Infinity Gauntlet is permanent.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody won't be able to heal him like Captain Marvel or Doctor Strange.
I guess we'll see, but I think that that's their kind of way of retiring him. Like, he'll be a character you will probably see, but he won't be in action. You know what I mean?
More of a cameo thing.
Yes, a cameo, or he's working the more intelligence side of things. I do think Thor will play a bigger role than we thought he would in the next phase of the MCU.
And I'm 100% happy with that.
I did want to mention, we talked about this a little too, that the Russo brothers assured us that these were going to be two standalone movies. It wasn't called Avengers 3 and 4. That's what they have separate titles. So I think that that's kind of not true. These movies tie directly together. They released them a year apart, which they would not have done if these were completely separate Avengers movies. They would have spread them out like they did the first, second, and third. So I think that it really isn't a standalone movie. I think that it relies heavily on Infinity War.
Right, and I can see why they kind of say it's a standalone movie, because everyone didn't expect to have the opening of the movie followed by the 5 years later. Everyone probably just thought it was going to be start where Infinity War left off and, just continue that way for 3 hours. So I get where they're hinting at that, but still, there's a lot you wouldn't understand without Infinity War. You know nothing about Thanos. You know nothing about why everyone's upset and why they're, trying to avenge everybody.
At the end of most of the superhero movies, you get a reset. So, yes, they still reference the facts that took place, but you have a sense of a reset as far as the next movie to take off on. In this movie, you couldn't do that because they were still relying heavily on the unfinished resolve of Infinity War. So I think that to say they're separate is really not true necessarily, but still, without a doubt, I thought they were awesome, exceptional movies. They brought life back into what is the team-up superhero movie. So I think that's all we have for you at this time. We're going to continue to put these unscripted videos out as we continue with this progress, and just to kind of give explanation behind why we feel what we feel. Thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you next time. And this is R&R Reviews Unscripted.